Oh, good morning, everyone. The time is now 10 o'clock, so I think we should get started. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public or press who have joined us today, either watching via the live stream or at this meeting. It looks like we've got a good full public gallery, so thank you for coming along. This is the meeting of the Highways and Transport Committee on the 3rd of March at Newshire Hall in Alconbury. The council allows filming and photography of its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and post to social media during the meeting. Can I ask that everyone present turns their phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and we will assemble in the car park. Would the Democratic Services Officer please report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. There are apologies from Councillor Goldsack, with Councillor Keane here as a sub, and from Councillor Sidlow.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests? Nope. Brilliant. Okay, so the minutes of the last meeting held on the 20th of January and the accompanying action log were published after the main agenda, and we were asked to approve both the confidential version and the public version of the minutes. Can I first ask whether any member disagrees with the accuracy of the public meetings? And obviously keep your discussion around the accuracy. I'm going to actually start off with that one. And it's in regards to the petition we received on Mill Road. And having watched back what I said, I think what I said was ever so slightly unclear. But I think what the committee requested was an update on the public realm improvements to Mill Road, and that's to be discussed and potentially added as a future committee meeting. I think that's been slightly confused. Can I ask that that's updated, Nick?
Yes, that's fine. Could you just read out the exact sentence that you'd like to
read out? So the committee requests an update on the public realm improvements on Mill Road. Does any other members have anything else they would like to question on the action log or the minutes? No. In that case, then I will sign those, both the confidential and the non-confidential, as approved. Brilliant. Do officer members have any comments on the action log? I don't think anybody did. Nope. Okay. I've accepted 4 public questions for the committee meeting today, 2 of which relate to agenda item 4, which is the Highways Improvement Programme Asset and Data Strategy, and 2 related to item 5, which is the Highways and Transport Capital Programme. The applicants will be invited to speak at the start of those items. We've also received a petition signed by 674 people calling for the council to prioritise the resurfacing of Cambridge Road. I would like to invite Miranda Fife to present her petition to the committee. Miranda, do you want to come up? Ms. Fife, you have 3 minutes to present your petition to the committee, followed by which members will have the opportunity to ask you questions. The traffic light indicator will turn amber when you have 30 seconds remaining, but over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, such was the strength of feeling about this petition to resurface Cambridge Road and Shelford Road, the A1301, that in just a few short weeks, we gathered, as you said, 674 signatures online. And we also had a further batch of another 17 paper signatures, which I brought along. So, in presenting our petition for this urgent full resurfacing of the A1301 Cambridge Road, Shelford Road, between Granham's Road in Great Shelford and the junction with Hawkston Road in Trumpington, I note with thanks that this section of carriageway has now been added to your capital maintenance programme for 2026-27. This should be cause for celebration. However, I fear that we have been here before. Exactly 1 year ago, this committee approved the resurfacing of a smaller section of the same road, namely Tunwells Lane and High Green in Great Shelford. But as everyone knows, the works on that section are yet to be even started. And in the meantime, residents and other road users have endured a horrible winter of atrocious surface deterioration, while any and all pothole reports, however dangerous and urgent, were simply batted away with the response, "Works already programmed." Lobbying our elected councillors was in vain, and it was only when a national newspaper and TV coverage highlighted the appalling state of this long stretch of road that even the most cursory of emergency repairs was done. The road is more tolerable now since your contractor's latest pass of those myriad repair patches, thank you, but it will not cope with another autumn and will probably not cope with another hot summer either. So please, we urge the committee and those responsible for scheduling these works to now commit to completing the full resurface from Headley Gardens all the way to Hawkston Road, as it says in your capital maintenance programme, but doing it in one go. You're going to start in April with the first bit. Please continue until it is finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fife. David, I believe you have the official officer response.
Yes, thank you. So firstly, Tunwell Lane starts on the 7th of April. It will be a 6-week programme, and those works have been scheduled to ensure timely and safe network access. Thank you for the petition relating to the A1301. We recognise that the authority's highways activities do have a significant impact across the county, and we do recognise that our roads are a high priority to residents, our communities and our stakeholders using the highway network. The A1301 is a very important route to us. As you've highlighted, and as is on the agenda today, further work has been identified on the A1301, and this is through our capital prioritisation process. So the route was identified based on asset condition data, and it scored very highly through that process, scoring 51 out of a maximum 65. So as a result of that, we're proposing to allocate over 1.5 million towards resurfacing of this route. This is in addition to the already identified project between Granham's Road and Station Road, which we'll schedule to commence in April. So the sections of the A1301 we will be repairing are identified in Appendix 1 of the report that will be discussed as part of today's agenda, and they include Shelford Road, London Road, Great Shelford, and Cambridge Road in Great Shelford. In the meantime, until that work's delivered, we are closely monitoring this route. We continue to inspect it on a regular basis, and we take reactive action in line with our operational standards as needed. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Members, do anyone have any questions for Ms. Fife? No. Okay. Thank you very much for coming with your petition today. I do think it is important to say, though, that we do get petitions on road quality and particularly on resurfacing. It is really important to say that this is done by our own scoring matrix that we developed and approved at the last committee meeting. So while I very much understand the desire to bring petitions to this committee about various roads, one thing we have been clear as an administration is that we objectively score which roads are done, and it's not done by petition. While public interest is very important, we do also make sure that we do it on a data first basis. And I think that is important that everybody watching understands that we have a really clear prioritization criteria for how that happens. And that is what is approved through this committee and how officers score things. And it is the case in this case that that road did score very highly through the criteria, and that's why it's been added to the list to be resurfaced. It is sad at the moment that we have such a large backlog backlog of roads. There are so many that are in need of repair, but it is important that we do that in a transparent data-led approach. But thank you very much for your question. We will move on. So item 4 is the report on the Highways Asset Management and Data Strategy, and presented by the Head of Asset Management, Design and Delivery, Josh Rutherford. In line with the special urgency measures set out in Chapter B3, Access to Information Procedure Rules of the Council Constitution, the Chair of the Council has agreed that this report could be considered. So Josh, over to you to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval of the Council's new Highways Asset Management Strategy, together with its supporting Highways Asset Data Strategy. These documents set out a modern, transparent and data-led approach to managing and maintaining Cambridgeshire's highway network. The report also proposes a number of service improvements, including trialling highway volunteers and increasing in-house delivery for minor work. Highways are a high priority for residents across Cambridgeshire. Public satisfaction has increased from 21% to 28% in the last year. However, concerns remain about road surfaces, footways and cycleways. The council manages a large and complex network, including thousands of kilometres of roads, footways, rights of way, bridges, drainage, signs, trees and other assets. The Highways Asset Management Strategy replaces the previous highway operational standards. It sets out how each type of highway asset will be inspected, prioritised and maintained, with a strong focus on safety, value for money and long-term asset condition. The strategy adopts a preventative approach where appropriate, treating assets earlier in their life to slow deterioration and maximise value for money. Different approaches are used depending on asset type, including preventative, worst first and risk-based approaches in line with national best practice. The asset management approach the county follows, which is incentivised by the Department for Transport, focuses on preventative treatments where possible. This means targeting most of our investment at roads and footpaths which aren't yet deteriorated to the point of requiring resurfacing or reconstruction. This is as preventative treatment. Costs are roughly 4 times cheaper than resurfacing and 10 times cheaper than reconstruction per metre square. This in turn means that the amount of network deterioration we are addressing for each pound spent is maximised. If this approach isn't followed, then the overall condition of the network deteriorates because we are not maintaining enough of it each year to outweigh the decline. As preventative treatments are not suitable for all roads, this can lead to misunderstandings regarding why a road in comparatively better condition is being repaired. However, this rationale is centred around maximising return on investment and repairing the maximum amount of network possible for the budget available. Resurfacing and reconstruction programmes still form a part of our approach to highway maintenance. An objective prioritisation process is then used to identify and rank locations countywide for preventative resurfacing and reconstruction treatments. This depends on which treatment is most appropriate based on road condition. This strategy introduces earlier intervention on potholes, improved preventative repairs, better vegetation management on footways and cycleways, more frequent inspections, clearer communication standards, and improved quality management. These are significant changes to how reactive maintenance is currently delivered and will be embedded following this committee, in addition to further training and workshops with officers to ensure a consistent, standardised approach to reactive maintenance is followed county-wide. Some of the key changes are carriageways. So the investigatory level for potholes has been reduced from 80 millimetres to 50 millimetres across the minor and local road network, which means the council will address safety defects sooner. Also on carriageways, the council has improved its approach to preventative pothole management. This means any road defects the council identifies which are 30 millimetres or deeper will be prioritised for planned maintenance and repaired within 13 weeks as part of a preventative maintenance programme. For footways and cycleways, the council has also improved its approach to preventative pothole management. This means any footway defects the council identifies which are more than 15 millimetres deep will be prioritised for planned maintenance and repaired within 13 weeks as part of a preventative programme. With regards to vegetation clearance, the council has introduced new criteria for addressing overgrown vegetation on footways and cycleways. This means encroaching vegetation will be better managed for those walking, wheeling, cycling, etc. For highway inspections, the council is increasing the frequency of some highway safety inspections and will now inspect the whole road network at a maximum period of 12 months. Previously, some routes were inspected every 24. And finally, quality management. The council has changed how it approaches pothole and patching repairs, so these will be undertaken in the most efficient manner possible. More generally, the council has identified processes for better managing quality and addressing defects, including a standardised approach to repair. The Highway Asset Data Strategy explains how high-quality data underpins investment decisions. It aims to consolidate asset data into a single system, make better use of modern survey technologies, and support long-term planning and forecasting. With regards to the suggested improvements and initiatives, 2 initiatives are proposed on a trial basis. The first is a highway volunteer pilot, enabling trained volunteers nominated by parish councils to undertake low-level maintenance under supervision in their area. The second is an increase in in-house delivery capability for minor maintenance work, allowing faster and more responsive local interventions. So in conclusion, the asset management strategy and the asset data strategy provide a clear and modern framework for managing Cambridgeshire's highways. They support safer roads, better value for money, and improved transparency. Members are asked to approve the documents to enable implementation from July 2026. A delegation is in place to make minor amendments to the strategy, and officers would welcome the opportunity to work with members on any further improvements they would like to explore. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Josh. Very comprehensive. Now we have 2 questions before we go any further. So, can you hear me? So we have 2 questions. The first one is again from Miranda Fife. So Miranda, do you want to come up and ask your question? Brilliant. Over to you again. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, again. As a road user who takes time to report defects on your system, I have experienced very variable responses to my reports of white lining defects. Your website somewhere has shown a table saying that giveaway signs will be repaired within 5 days of a report, with all other types of white lines being replaced within 13 weeks. In my experience, this has never been the case in practice. As just one example, on my regular cycle route to my village, there is a totally missing giveaway line to the main 1301, which I first reported last October and remains invisible to this day, despite, again, my local elected councillors trying to chase it up. On page 53 of this new Highways Asset Management Strategy document, I see that it very helpfully gives photographic examples of the state of white lines that would count as Category 1A, Category 1B and Category 2. That all looks great on paper, but it is a complete fiction. And those given timescales of now 5 days and 21 days for priority cases totally ignore the fact that your white lining works are focused on when the weather is suitable, i.e. in the warm and dry weather more typical of spring and summer. Last June, I raised directly with the council the issue of missing white lines on Hills Road near the Sixth Form College. I chased this again in August, at which point I extracted from your Report It site, the old version, a full list of the outstanding white lining report faults for that area, the oldest of which dated back to March 2023, and itself referred to those lines having not been repainted for 10 years prior to that. I raised the case with the executive team later in the autumn when I hadn't heard, and only yesterday was I told that an order to repaint had in fact been placed last November, but its 13-week timescale expired last week. The weather was blamed as the culprit for non-completion this time. So today I am urging you, committee, not to approve this new strategy in its current state, because it lists unachievable timescales given for replacing barely visible road markings. I think it is dishonest to put such a process down on paper unless you have the resources and procedures in place to actually carry out what you're promising in practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fife. Next, we have Sarah Hughes. Sarah, do you want to come up and ask your question? And you know the drill. You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. So before I start, I just wanted to say I'm asking this question in a personal capacity, not as a representative of any of the sustainable travel groups in which I'm involved. So this year I made a New Year's resolution to report the potholes and other highways problems I encountered whilst walking, cycling, taking the bus and driving around Cambridge using the County Council's online report it tool, highwaysreporting.cambridgeshire.gov.uk, rather than just complaining about them to my friends and family. It actually took a New Year's resolution to make me use the Report It tool again after my previous poor experience with reporting highways fault. In September 2022, I reported a damaged surface on a shared use pass, which had caused my young son to fall off his bike and injure himself. And I only received a response 6 months later in March 2023, which said that the surface would be repaired within 12 weeks, so not for another 2.5 months. And this delayed response, fair to say, didn't encourage me to report any more faults after that for a very long time. So returning to 2026 and taking over a new leaf, turning over a new leaf, so far I've made 9 reports since the beginning of the year, all in the first 3 weeks of January. And the cover page on the Report It tool says, please allow up to 10 working days for us to update you on our investigation of the problem. So all these reports I submitted a lot longer than 10 working days ago. I'm really pleased to say I've received informative email updates for 3 of the 9 faults I made, and works have been ordered for 2 of these. That's absolutely great. Works relating to one other issue I reported have been ordered, but I haven't received an email notification, and nothing seems to have happened with the other 5. They're just marked as investigating on the map. So it's fair to say that this year my experience as a customer has been mixed, although so far much better than it was in 2022, although that was only just 1 report, so I may have been unlucky in 2022. So I was really glad to see item 4, the Highways Improvement Programme Asset and Data Strategy. I think this is a great report and there's lots to be really pleased about there. And I was particularly really pleased to see that it talks about new ways of working that include a greater focus on the customer, including a target to action 90% of customer reports within 10 working days. After all, I feel it's really in the county's interest to encourage public reporting of highways faults. A public report could pick up a serious fault between official inspections, potentially saving someone from serious injury or worse, or damage to a vehicle. So I was surprised, therefore, that the Report It tool itself isn't clearly mentioned in the asset management strategy or the asset data strategy. In fact, it's not clear from item 4 how reports made by the public interlink with Aurora and the asset management strategy, and not evident how the information the public has provided is actually used and what role Report It plays in the new customer service strategy. So could the Chair please explain how the County Council is currently performing against its target to action customer reports within 10 working days? And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd understood action customer reports as meaning respond to customers by email. So please correct me if I've not understood that properly. And then also explain how the committee plans to make best use of customers' reports from the highways reporting tool, both from the perspective of fixing highways faults and also improving customer engagement.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So Josh, I think you've got official officer responses for both of those questions.
So Miranda's first. So thank you for providing feedback on the new highway asset management strategy. I would like to thank you for taking the time to review the document and your positive comments regarding some of the changes which have been proposed. It is important to note that the changes proposed in this document won't go live until the start of July 2026. Until then, the existing highway operational standards document will be in place. Whilst it is best practice to undertake road marking maintenance during the summer months, avoiding the poorer weather, the new timeframes will be applicable all year round, and work should be undertaken in line with the timeframes set out in the strategy from July. Hills Road has been identified in our next year's highway maintenance programme for resurfacing, and 1.8 million has been allocated to this project. All road markings would be refreshed as part of this work. A further £800,000 worth of funding has also been allocated specifically for the maintenance of road markings county-wide. I have also asked the local highway maintenance team to follow up when a revised date is confirmed for the work that Miranda outlined.
And have you got an answer for Sarah?
thank you for your feedback regarding the highway asset management strategy. Good customer service is very important to us. The Report It tool feeds directly into our asset management system, with customer reports then being assigned to a highway maintenance officer to action. The previous system was 20 years old, and there were various challenges with it, which made managing customer reports difficult. The system has the capability to monitor the timeliness of officer responses and also the amount of correspondence which has been received via Report It. I am sure you'll be unsurprised to hear that we have had a huge spike in customer reports over the winter period. At the same time, we have significantly increased the resources we have repairing defects on our network. For example, in this period, we've repaired over 10,000 potholes and have over 6,000 more ordered and awaiting delivery. It is fair to say that officers are still getting to know our new system and what it is capable of. The system was introduced at the end of September 2025. Going forward, we have identified the following enhancements which will improve customer engagement and utilise the network intelligence provided by our customers. So firstly, hotspot mapping will be used to identify peaks in customer reports on certain roads and then dynamically point resource to find and fix those issues as quickly as possible. Improved customer updates direct from our system, which will include completion pictures of reported repairs to show what we have delivered and when. Orders which officers raise in our asset management system will be reflected on Report It. This will show customers where work has been identified and ordered by officers and when the network has been inspected. Customer reports will be utilised as part of the capital prioritisation process to identify resurfacing schemes and other projects which residents see as a priority. And the system improves accountability and enables managers to focus on areas which need more support to meet service requirements.
Thank you very much, Josh, and thank you, Sarah, for your question. I'm just going to add for myself at the moment that obviously the condition of the highways is a deep challenge at the moment. As Josh outlined, we saw a massive rise in the number of public reports around Christmas time. There was that kind of period of snow and ice that happened, and you can see our reports spiked from about 500 customer reports a week to about 2,000 in a single week, which has left us with a bit of a backlog. And catching up with that is a top priority at the moment. I think it's best that we park too much discussion about that committee right now until we get to the performance report, because I think that's probably the best opportunity for us to discuss it rather than talking about it now when we probably need to be going through the process and procedures and how we do things. But thank you for your questions. I will now turn to the committee though to say, does anyone have any?
Yeah, could I just ask, do I have an opportunity to ask for a clarification response?
I'm
No.
sorry, we don't do follow-up questions here. If you do want to send one in to me, though, I can try and get that seen too. Thank you very much. Members, do any members have any questions for Josh? Councillor Manning.
I'm going to admit this may be covered in the report, so if it is, I apologise for asking it, but you mentioned the volunteer stuff and you mentioned parishes, so how is that going to work in the city, which obviously isn't parished? Which city, I should say.
Yeah, so we'll just be looking at a similar approach with regards to the resident associations, but essentially there will be oversight from a kind of targeted resource on our side. It's then just managing how we do that in the city to also deliver the same outcomes.
Yeah, so I probably just want to stress that, keep elected members, because obviously residents associations vary and some areas don't have residents associations, but I'm sure councillors may know of groups of people who would be happy to sort of do this sort of thing, but haven't actually formed a residents association, for example. So if we can make sure we go through, I'm sure you will, but if we make sure we can go through elected members as well.
Yeah, just by way of assurance, elected members will absolutely be involved. It will be a pilot initially, and where we can draw on residents associations, we will, but that is not the only.
Brilliant. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Gardner. I should say, by the way, that I do have an amendment on this one. So we'll do the questions first, then we'll do the amendment. But if you've got questions to Josh, let's do those first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Josh, for a very comprehensive report. My question, well, I've got a couple of questions, Chair, if that's okay. The first one is regard to the Quiet Way, which we're going to install in between Graffham and Brampton, but to date I've seen nothing in this report to tell me what the maintenance regime is for a quiet way, because it doesn't conform with anything else we've got in the county. So I would be interested to know what the maintenance regime is with regard to that. With following on from Councillor Manning's point with regard to volunteers, how, if we get a parish council comes and says, oh, we're quite happy to do potholes, what size potholes and on what roads are we going to be asking parish councils to do that? And the same applies with vegetation, clearance and everything else. What sort of size of potholes are we going to be looking at that parishes can assist with?
Thank you, Councillor. So the maintenance regime on the quiet ways, we'll take that away and get back to you on that one separately. The volunteers, pothole sizes and everything else. So where volunteers would come in would be on the non-statutory items. So anything which the council should repair because it meets investigatory levels would be repaired by the council. Pothole sizes, types of roads, we need to work through kind of a risk assessment and kind of safety assessment around what is appropriate. The expectation is that they will be local roads. So things like cul-de-sacs and the like, where very basic traffic management only was required. And that would mirror the setup in other county councils which follow that approach as well.
Can I just come
Go
back?
on then, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much for that, Josh. That's fine. When it comes to repairs to potholes, then, can we look at, with regard to that, can we look at, instead of us coming out to repair one pothole in a village, which cannot be cost effective for this authority to go and do one, whereas I have reported numerous online and they're all clumped together, and yet we come out and do one. This cannot be right. Surely we should do a system where we have in North Bedfordshire, where they have what they call a pothole hit squad. And the council there goes out and puts a notice in the village and states we are going to repair all potholes in the village. And they do that. Then they only go to that team only then goes to the village once. Especially when you're in rural areas, it takes such a long time to get from Huntingdon out to some of these rural villages. It would make more sense, as far as I can see, and be far more cost effective, far more green for the authority if we only went to these villages once. So why do we not do that and put that into our asset management, the way we're going to work?
So I'm actually going to answer for you, Councillor Gardner, which is to say that, that the amendment I'm bringing is to come back to us to discuss making potential changes. That is one that I'm very happy to make. Just for your own benefit, though, it isn't quite as easy as that, as with all of these things. I totally understand. There are many things that need to be put in place, and it is something we've wanted to do for a while, but it isn't quite as easy as it looks on the surface. And I can talk to you for 20 minutes on how difficult it is. Okay, who else have I got on my list? This is questions before the amendment, though. So questions for Josh. I've got Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. The first is on trialing different materials, which actually features in the, well, linking to the Green and Sustainable County part of the report. I was actually wondering, because I was trying to look at the evidence of the impact on quality of repairs of using different and more environmentally friendly materials. So I was wondering, what is your assessment of that? I actually found the evidence so far suggests that the quality is at least the same, if not actually better than some conventional materials. So I was wondering what your thoughts are around that, but also what are the cost implications of that, and to what extent contractors are actually flexible to have more innovative approaches, part of that overall aim. I'm just not familiar if there's any actual research in Cambridgeshire around this particularly. The second one is around the in-house capacity. Councillor Gardner already touched on the use of volunteers and involvement with parish councils, but the report also says there will be a review of having more capacity for in-house resource in 27-28. So I was just wondering what exactly are we reviewing and whether this will come back to committee and what we're measuring there, and what's the potential to actually expand beyond 2028. And then finally, if I may, on quality, inspections, I was looking recently at the Freedom of Information request for the county council, and it said that it actually shows that we are indeed inspecting around 5% of orders for reactive repairs, and out of those, around 10% were not so-called up to standard. Obviously, if we were to inspect every single one, there would be like thousands of potholes across Cambridgeshire that won't be up to standard. So the question is, what more can we do in terms of actually holding contractors to account when repairs are not up to standard? And again, what is our estimate of how much taxpayer money was spent in this process of actually having poor repairs, and how to address that? Because I think the quality of repairs does come up. Of course, many residents mentioned the number of potholes, but the second theme is indeed the quality of repairs and what can we do to improve that. So it's quite a few questions. So thank you, Josh, and a very comprehensive report. Thank you.
Thanks. Over to Josh.
Thank you. So the first one was kind of around trialing different materials. So what we're using kind of within reactive maintenance is there's kind of the standard hot lay materials. You've then got the Dragon Patcher, which is kind of a bitumen and stone mix, and then you've got the cold lay materials as well. So those are the ones which are bagged, and they're a permanent cold lay fix. So those are the kind of three different things that we're looking at the moment. Within kind of the hot lay asphalts, we're then looking at asphalts which are denser, so lower voids, which means less susceptible to water ingress and potholes and everything else, and also increasing the amount of recycled aggregate within those. So ticking a sustainability box, as well as looking at materials which last a long time and keep the water out. Other items that we're looking at, we have trialed and we're kind of pushing out further now, are around kind of cold recycled products. So that's essentially kind of material which has come off the road anyway, is then cold mixed with a bit of cement to bind it, and then it's put back into the road. From a performance perspective, we always need to be careful of where we apply it, to make sure that it's appropriate for the road. But there are significant carbon and also cost savings with that, and it's something that we've almost rolled out as standard on our footway network, and we are trialing more on our road network now as well. With regards to kind of the in-house capacity question, so the intention next year is to move to a model where we have a number of highway operatives that we employ direct, which we can then point towards certain, more basic kind of network issues within kind of a place-based setting. So that might be vegetation clearance or the like. We're going to review that over the next year. And then if there is, if that is positive, then we'd potentially look to increase that capacity for 27-28 and roll it out on a more district basis, rather than currently where it's a north-south kind of divide. With regards to kind of the quality inspections, and what more can we do? So we're kind of looking at how we can incentivize the contractor more to make sure that they get it right first time. So discussions around kind of what that would look like. We're out on the network inspecting a lot more than that 5% now. So the 5% is the absolute minimum that we will do. It's looking more like kind of 10% now at the moment. And then all defects that we identify, the contractor returns at their own cost to correct. So I think that's what we're doing right now. And then with regards to quality and everything else, that there's various things that are mentioned within the asset management strategy where we can be a lot clearer about what we want the contractor to do. And then make sure that they follow through on that with regards to kind of addressing patchwork quilts, using standardized materials and everything else.
Thank you very much, Josh. I will also remind members that we had a confidential session last time around, which was talking about our highways contract. So while it's very tempting to get into discussions of that in this meeting, please try and steer away from anything that could be regarded as confidential in that session. Hopefully we will be able to talk about that more publicly later. Next up, I've got Councillor Dupre, then Councillor Edge, Councillor Hathorn, and then I think we're straying into debate, so I'll move my amendment before after those three, if that's okay. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, and mine is a question. Going back to the subject of the first question, which was about the proposal for the volunteers, which is something that interests me greatly. It seems to me that there is a difference between what a volunteer or a group of volunteers might be able to do with regard to potholes in a cul-de-sac in the centre of a city or in a large market town or urban area, and what could be achieved by volunteers with, say, large equipment, experience moving large volumes of earth, and probably qualifications and certification in some of the rural areas where there is an urgent need to deal with many of my favourite topics, peat soil affected roads. And I'm wondering to what extent the opportunity for volunteering on the highway is variable depending on the geography, and whether, with the appropriate level of supervision and agreed standards and inspection and so on, it might be possible to consider doing a lot more on the highway with the appropriate use of suitably certificated and qualified volunteers with equipment that they are used to using, to address some of those issues as well, and to be variable according to the circumstances and the geography of this.
Thank you. And just for clarification there, Councillor Dupre, I think you're talking about things like the likes of farmers and other professionals that are in the area working already. But Josh, over to you.
So I think at the moment it's a proposal and it's a pilot. So we'll explore everything, and happy to kind of work through what the pros and cons would be, the potential risks, liabilities to the authority and everything else, to make sure we enable as much volunteering as possible on the highway.
Thank you, Councillor Edge.
Thank you, Josh. Actually, Councillor Bulak kind of went where I was to a certain extent, but I do have a slightly further question on it around the carbon footprint side of things. So I totally understand the ambition with kind of looking at different materials and what have you. I think where I was wanting to go with it is just understanding better our technical confidence, as it were, with those materials, particularly I think the cold recycled products, and I think it's about kind of understanding where they can have value from a carbon footprint perspective, and where the line crosses in the sense that they may not last as long, and actually, are they serving that carbon footprint purpose, or actually are we going to end up having to replace them more frequently? So that was one of my questions. I think I'm going to probably try and hold the rest back until debate, because it's probably more relevant for debate.
Thanks, Councillor Edge. Josh.
Yeah, so specifically kind of the cold recycled materials. So that's a national specification. It's a product which has been used on the trunk road network as well. So there's really good confidence in it. It's just a case of horses for courses, and just making sure that where it's applied, you've done the right investigations. It's not somewhere that might be soil affected. It's susceptible to water ingress. So you just need to make sure that you're applying it in the right circumstances.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hathorn.
So it's probably more relating to your amendment. Can I ask a question after your amendment?
Sounds good. So, members, before we do, Councillor Green.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? It's just relevant to things that have come up very quick. Josh, is the cold recycled materials, is that the low carbon concrete, or is that something different?
It's something different. So the low carbon concrete uses a different additive to conventional concrete. The cold recycled is essentially you're not heating anything up. You're mixing things cold with cement to bind it, and then using that as a binder course underneath kind of the surface of footways or roads.
Thanks. With respect to the low carbon concrete, which I really welcome as trialling, have any other authorities used it, or are we sort of in the vanguard?
So other authorities have used it, and we used it on a number of schemes last year, recycling schemes, of which I want to say Long Drove Holme. There was a project out near Holme where we in situ recycled a road, and we used low carbon concrete. and the savings from a carbon perspective were significant.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we're confident that it has the same sort of structural integrity as...
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll dig out the case study and I'll share it with the committee. Okay.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Green, I want to congratulate you. I think you're the first member I've ever known that's brought a teapot to a committee meeting. So well done on that one. So members, I do have an amendment here, which has been circulated in advance of the meeting. It's to add a recommendation, which is to establish a cross-party member task and finish group to review the highways asset management strategy and asset data strategy in light of this year's pothole season, and to bring forward any recommendations or improvements to committee, because I think it is worth us discussing this and looking at the whole with Josh and the team, looking at what the financial implications of things and what the art of the possible is here. Does any member wish to debate that, or are we happy to move to a vote on it? Councillor Hathorn.
Yeah, so I've sort of got a question. So I share the concerns about the Report It tool. I have reported faults across my division and I just don't get the responses back. So I know it's been incredibly challenging recently, but I repeat the line that, you know, that it is not working as well as we are saying, as the county council is saying it is. So I guess it's what are we sure that the scope of this task and finish group will be sufficient? So are we going to be able to look at, alongside the strategy, how we monitor this and how we make sure we're actually delivering it? Because we do need to do that. And, you know, is this going to have the teeth it needs to, or is it going to be another thing that we just wish was a bit better?
Thank you, Councillor Hathorn. Josh, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, just quickly, it probably falls into a conversation around those KPIs and service standards that are within the asset management strategy that we were suggesting was then reported to committee on a basis as to what that is. Obviously, that can be discussed within the group.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And okay, just before I go any further, I just wanted to clarify that I have a seconder for this one. Sitting next to me, Councillor Watt and Councillor Gardner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to support your alteration. I was just going to say that I fully support what Councillor Hathorn has said. I have been reporting on the Report It tool potholes and I get no response. My parish councils who have been reporting on the Report It tool are getting no response. And that is what is causing anger more than anything else, is the fact they're getting no response. Yesterday, I took out an officer to show them the state of a road in my. I'm just highlighting the point.
Councillor, I totally accept all that, and I think we need to discuss it.
Point.
Can I suggest that we put that in the performance paper, though, because I think that's the perfect time for us to talk about the current performance.
Happy to do that.
I think it is important that we discuss it. I think doing it at the right point is fine. Okay, is everyone content to vote on the amendment to start with, and then we'll move on to the debate? Okay, can I see those in favour of the amendment? That's unanimous. So we will now move on to the item as amended. Do I have any members wishing to debate or add anything to the rest of that item? Councillor White.
I actually had a further question for Josh on the way that we currently manage risk assessing potholes and how we categorize defects. So the new version helpfully has this risk assessment table, which is a lot more detailed than the old HOS, which was just category 1 is things that need prompt attention and category 2 is everything else. But in the categorization of things as a severity of harm, is the intention that we are designating severity of harm on a human level or on a vehicle level? And will it be different for footways and carriageways? Because I feel like one of the things we really need to pay attention to, and certainly I think this is going to be something I'll bring up in a working group that comes out of this, will be making sure that things like footways and areas for cyclists have a higher standard, I would hope, than the middle of the carriageway, so that people who are walking, wheeling, cycling don't, fall into the path of an oncoming vehicle. Is there anything sort of planned into that already?
I think it's probably something best explored in the working group, but that kind of human impact is obviously kind of the primary factor that we would consider. And yes, kind of footways, it will be slips, trips, and falls. Potential of injury, that type of thing. So yes, I think something we can definitely work through in more detail within the working group.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Edge.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether this is going to end up being a bit more of a statement or if I don't know how much debate there is actually going to be on this, but I just wanted to kind of make some observations really, and Josh, you may want to come back on some of it or not. But I mean, to me, looking at this strategy, I really welcome it. It's there's a lot of detail in there. It's a massive step forward in the right direction. I would hope I really welcome the amendment as well, though, because I think this has to evolve. It has to be a document that changes, that listens to and responds to residents that are making really valid points. A couple of things, if I may, that are kind of I'm just picking up. I think the weather comment is really relevant, and this is it's such a complex thing that you're having to work with here and handle, and I think being transparent about how things change at different times of the year, it would be good to see that covered in the strategy a little bit more, because then I think it just makes things clearer. I think the main thing I really wanted to cover is my support of preventative, and I think and I hope that certainly kind of councillors, but actually hopefully residents are becoming more familiar of the real the real struggles we're having with kind of government funding on this, which is obviously a national thing. But I guess it's the balance between preventative and when we just need to get things done. So I appreciate that within the report, within the strategy, there's reference to risk, but at that point that I think it's measuring that kind of red point of preventative. If we're trying to be for preventative, it feels to me like we need to have a scoring system that much more favours those roads that can still be this year covered by preventative, but if left another year, they're going to fall beyond that. And it just doesn't feel to me that the scoring system that's there, particularly I'd say in the more rural areas, but probably people argue that in different ways, dependent on their, it really covers that at the moment. And hopefully that's something we can kind of get out of the amended kind of group and what have you. But I just feel that we need to understand the risk of what's beyond prevention and how we step in those situations, that we're not closing those out, and that we have a clear process within our strategy as to how that might need to change things if there happened to be a lot of roads in a given year that fell into that territory.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. And yes, I do support what you're saying. I think you're straying slightly into the next item, which is the capital maintenance programme, which goes with the scoring criteria of how we score which roads get done where and when. But it is something we very much need to be thinking about. Obviously, as you're very aware, in Cambridgeshire, we inherited an £800 million backlog, which does make things very challenging in making sure that the roads continue to be improved. And it is one of the proudest things I think we've done as an administration is being able to put enough money into actually, keep up with things, which is the first time in a very, very long time that's happened. So I'm glad that we are able to do that. But you're right, how we deploy that and how we make sure that we are trying to improve the state of the roads is really, really important, and how we prioritise accordingly. Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. So I welcome this strategy. It is more ambitious. It's also more practical, and it responds to the things that people have asked for. So all the time people say, well, why when there are 3 potholes do you only fix one? Well, this is going to patch the 3 potholes. That is what people have been asking for years and years and years. So that is brilliant. It is also aspiring to fix defects far earlier, so that a flaw in the road doesn't become something massively blown out in January, when the freezing and the rain has hit. So that there were some small minor potholes on roads in my division which have now become absolutely massive because they weren't at intervention criteria prior to the pothole outbreak, and since then have really, really declined. So I absolutely welcome the ambition of this. I think we all understand that not every fault is going to fix within the time frame, and there will be a variety of reasons, including the weather. But I think as a questioner suggested, to reduce the ambition of this document would be a massive mistake. We want to be ambitious. We want to put the funding in place and the staff in place so that we can deliver ambitious road improvements for our residents. So I think that this is moving absolutely in the right direction. And I just want to quickly comment on the change between the highway service when I joined this council and the highway service today. And when I joined the council, it was either a service full of vacancies or a service that was empty of people. You would try and get something done and it would be an interim person or there'd be no one there and it would just take forever. And we have effectively rebuilt the highway service whilst working the entire time. There are members of staff doing jobs. We have improved everything consistently. It's not straightforward because when you make one change, such as the report of fault Aurora system, it then identifies other things that need to be improved. But we are moving in the right direction in an incredibly challenging environment when fundamentally government isn't delivering enough money to local councils for them to be able to make the progress at the pace that people want. But this is moving exactly in the right direction, and I'll be supporting it today.
Thank you, Councillor Hathorn. And I'm actually just going to take a minute to thank David, Josh and Barry, because those three in this room have done more for improving the state of Cambridgeshire's roads and revolutionising our systems than anyone else. So thank you to the three of you here for doing that. It is greatly appreciated. Next up, I've got Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Chair. The question it's a point really when we come to look at potholes and carrying on from Councillor Wyatt. I think we need to look at rural roads where there are no footpaths. We have got everybody on that section of road. It's a single track road. You've got pedestrians, cyclists, horse riders, HGVs, cars, vans, Amazon vans, everything. If we don't keep the roads maintained, people cannot use those roads. They cannot cycle. This authority is trying to get people in rural areas to cycle more, fine, but we do need to keep those roads to a standard where you can cycle. So that's something I would hope the working group will look at in depth going forward, because it is something we do need to look at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, I've got Councillor Galbraith.
What I was going to ask has already been asked, so thank you.
Okay, Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to briefly comment on the work around drainage, because it's an area where before 2021 we didn't have the records, and I think a lot has improved in terms of obviously flood mitigation, flood prevention, and drainage work as well. However, it still says in the paper that the records are not, complete, and it will cost a lot of money to actually have those records closer to being perfect and being able to actually having this kind of reactive work. So I do understand it's not a priority in terms of getting those records complete. However, it does say that we need to concentrate more on areas where flooding issues occur and how to actually prioritize those areas. Obviously, in my area in St. Ives, but also like in many other divisions with members here represented here, flooding, it does come up very, very frequently alongside the number of potholes. And I think it's an area where we need to look at, obviously we have this 2-year cycle of maintenance of drains, which is good to have that program. But the question is how do we actually do more reactive work in areas that experience flooding very frequently? And I will welcome those the comments from the officers or the chair around that piece of work, because I think that's really important for flood mitigation in general, and obviously as lead flood authority working with our different agencies and districts as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boulat, and you are right there. Drainage is an area that needs constant improvement. you are right that when we first came in and said that we wanted to empty every drain every 2 years, the first thing we had to do is find out where the drains were because there was no record of them, which is quite shocking, to be perfectly honest. One of the things that we are doing, and I think is important, is that now we actually have a system to track gullies when they are full, when they're emptied, because I think we do need to move to a far more intelligent-based system. And looking at those that are repeatedly full when they come to be emptied, then we can prioritize those and increase the frequency that they are done. But obviously, we have to gather that data first. So that's the part of the challenge is to, one, identify where the gullies are, then start to map the condition of them every time we come to empty them. But it is something I hope that we can work on in the future to be able to get a more smart gully system, as it were, rather than relying on the same action for every gully everywhere, when we all know that they work in very different ways and have very different requirements. Next, I've got Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hathorn actually covered a lot of what I was going to say. So I just wanted to stress the one thing is how transparent we're being with this strategy. And I think it's brilliant, Josh. I was first in this authority in 2010. Everything on the highway was green. There was nothing like this level of detail to scrutinise. And when you were in opposition, for example. So I think that's a thing we should be really proud of. I'd really just want to address, there was a kind of implications in one of the public questions that there was a bit of a fiction behind this. It's not a fiction, it's ambition, and it's being transparent and it's being ambitious. And much as I absolutely hate to compliment my friends in public, I've got to say, Chair, that partly this is down to your leadership. And I think you should take a lot of credit here, as well as the officers, because you've been the constant as the chair of this committee when we've been through massive changes in highways. So well done, and you can pay me later for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Manning. It has been a long journey with very long days, but as I say, I do want to pay tribute to the officers that have been doing this as well. It has been a phenomenal level of change, but I think we do have to not rest on our laurels, and we all know that nothing is perfect at the moment. In fact, at the moment, it's very much not perfect, but that's what challenges and pushes us forwards. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with the comments that Councillor Hathorn made earlier. I think a lot of this depends on our local highway officers, and I've been quite lucky actually in my division because we had a very good local highway officer who moved on to bigger things as we expected because they were so good at their job. We did have a gap for recruitment, of course, but now we have a relatively new person in place who's also very good at what they do. And it is encouraging that we don't perhaps see that people are leaving as much as they did. If they're going for a promotion within the organisation, that's one thing. But they obviously want to stay with the authority, which I find quite encouraging. On the reporting system, it is a little bit complex. In fact, I checked my emails this morning and got a lot of updates from reporting things. Perhaps they knew I was coming to this meeting, I don't know. But and a lot of it was actioned. But then I do get an email saying, sorry, we haven't progressed your report. Do you want to, want us still to do something? And I thought, well, what was it I reported? Because it was a long time ago. And he didn't actually sort of say to me, they didn't say to me what the issue was they were referring to. So I think there's still some tweaks to be done. But we are definitely moving along in the right direction. And I'm going to now compliment Councillor White, Chair, because you've had a compliment already. Councillor White has very kindly agreed to sort of walk around bits of Huntingdon with me and other local councillors to assess some of the problems. And I do get people's frustrations. I get it myself. We all do when you see a pothole patched and there's one next to it and you think, okay, what happened there? But it sounds like this amendment is going to start to address that. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd also like to add my congratulations to the ambition of the strategy. But I feel like we've had two questions today bringing to our attention the fact that things are not happening within the agreed timelines. And for every public questioner, I'm sure we have many, many more people emailing local councillors, and above that, there's many, many more people, many, many more residents who are just going to shrug and lose confidence in reporting highway defects. So I'd just like to say I really do welcome the ambition, but there's ambition and there's over-promising, and I'm hoping we're not over-promising here. And I welcome the working group that's being set up. That's probably something that we need to do to monitor this. One thing that springs to mind is with the move to more preventative maintenance, there's probably going to be a change to the dynamics of how things work and pressures in the system that we just don't know. So again, a working group, fantastic. Let's monitor it. So yeah, in conclusion, great ambition, but let's just hope we can meet the targets that have been put there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Do I have anybody else? Yes, Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to comment on the prioritisation and the objectives in section 1 of the report on the asset and data strategy. I think it is very important that whilst we do need to look at the carbon implications of what is done, that we have to prioritise safety. And of course, that is mentioned. But as we discovered at the last meeting, the state of the roads and the state of potholes is not one of the road safety factors, which, for instance, is considered in the Vision Zero programme we discussed then. And I think that we do owe it to our residents to give a high priority to safety, to accept that if people are having to slalom around on the roads to avoid potholes, including into and out of the cycle lanes, this is a significant safety factor. There's mention also of footways. And I think in our villages, we need to bear in mind that there are many people, particularly elderly, who've moved there in order to ensure that they can walk to their medical centre, to the shop or whatever, once they no longer feel they're able to drive. And the state of those footways, Josh referred earlier to trip hazards and so on, it can be very isolating for many of our elderly people if they no longer feel it's safe to go out on those footways. We have reference here to the trial, new materials. I'm very supportive of any attempt to use alternative materials, including, I notice a concern about, here we are, the deeper treatments are most environmentally harmful. I think that actually the carbon emissions of those may be a marginal factor. Those deeper treatments often last longer. They're less likely to need to be repeated. That's thus reducing the inconvenience referred to here. And we shouldn't be too put off by that. We should be very supportive of what was mentioned earlier of the alternative materials, and we should look more widely at other alternative materials to replace virgin aggregates, which other councils, I believe, are looking at. I think we need to focus our programme on the resilience network, roughly speaking, a tenth of the total network in the county. As to the trials with volunteers, this was something that was mentioned by David Allard in a meeting with one of my parish councils 3 weeks ago, and they have discussed it subsequently and are very keen to be involved in the pilot. They think there is a lot of scope for taking this forward. So I will be supporting that later on. I won't say anything in relation to the M contract. That will be a matter for discussion in maybe in the new working group at a later stage.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fane. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome most of the recommendations in this, particularly the fixing potholes which are close to each other. I am happy that there's a discussion of the computer systems and like data required for this. I think that this committee might need more oversight of how that rollout is going on, from sort of some discussions I've had. I think that maybe that's sort of progressing at a certain pace. And I think having eventually building that integrated computer system and making sure that everything is on there, for example, all the gullies are on there, and that Carbon Tech is either replaced or integrated into it, is very important. And I think there should be a bit more of a sort of roadmap that we can see of what steps should be taken and when they are, so that we could possibly have sort of oversight, not give recommendations necessarily, but understand whether the computer systems are developing at the right pace. So I was just wondering if that's something that if there's an overall roadmap of the software and where that's going, where you think that's going, and whether that's something that might be able to be shown to committee at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I think we're more into debate than questions, but I can pick that up afterwards for you with the roadmap of that. Members, I'm aware that we've been going for well over an hour now. I think we've had a pretty full debate. I've got a few more names. I've got Councillor Galbraith left, but I think after that we might bring this to a close. So, Councillor Galbraith.
Thank you, Chair. Also, thank you, Josh, for the ambitions of your report. I'm sorry to be so practical, but I personally am finding that my constituents are more worried about the repairs being done on the road network, the potholes. A lot of the things that are being discussed here are ambitious and great and all the rest, but there's practicalities to be addressed here. A lot of what I'm finding on the highways reported network is that I found that when I've looked at it, some of the holes which are supposedly been repaired, I've gone and looked at, haven't been repaired. So either we've got tarmac thieves operating in my area, or in fact, it's not working. I do hope we're going to keep this to practicalities and talking about alternative materials and so on. And I understand the ambitions of the Green Party with lower carbon and so on. But at the moment, my constituents in my area, where there's, according to statistics given by, I think it was Councillor Dupree, 98% of my or division is actually made up of sand based roads. So the number of potholes, the number of problems I've got in my division is high. And that's what my constituents want to hear about. If any of them are in listening to this debate or watching it, I should say, I think that's all they want to hear about. What are we going to do in practical terms to solve the problem? And I hope that's what the subcommittee will address in the main.
Thank you, Councillor Galbraith. I'm sad to say it, but I think money is essentially what's needed for a lot of that. It is about getting ahead of things, which is why it was a little bit disappointing to see some other parties, should we say, not supporting our budget amendments to put more money into it to continue that investment, because fundamentally, as has been reported widely, there is a £27 million gap every year from what DFT gives us and what we actually need to be able to maintain our roads in the current state. And addressing that is quite challenging every time. Sorry, Josh, did you put your hand up? I want to say something there. Sorry.
Just quickly on kind of that, pursuing kind of maybe carbon savings or whatever else at the cost of quality repairs, etc. Kind of the quality and the right outcome and addressing safety are paramount. It's then where things align with regards to also maybe making carbon savings as well, which then actually deliver a cost saving, which means we can then repair more of the network. So the example of the footways, where that is cheaper than conventional products and it offers the same performance.
I think we can probably get into this a little bit more in the next item as well when we start talking about the capital programme. Thank you very much for bringing this today, Josh. I will wrap this up now. I really deeply appreciate the Highways volunteers. It's something I've been keen to get going for a long time. I've seen the success in Devon, and I think it will be well appreciated amongst some of our communities. I also really welcome all of the changes in this Highways Asset Management Strategy, Highways Asset Data Strategy, all the work to be able to modernise the service. I'm really hoping the parts on how to prevent pothole quilts do turn out to be workable, as that has been a personal bugbear of mine for as long as I have been a councillor. So anything we can do on that is greatly appreciated, although it does obviously also require us to have a fit for purpose contract. So that is always the challenge in this, and making sure that we are able to deliver it, as others have said. Just before we move to the vote, the membership of the subgroup to look into this, the task and finish group, I think we probably need to sort that out via spokes. So we will take that to our spokes meeting and work out the membership of it. I believe there's a delegation in the constitution to Lee, who should be able to actually, by delegation, appoint members to it. But we are now being asked to approve this as amended. I've been told that I don't have to go and do my speed reading of reading out the amendments each time. So if everyone can look at the recommendations and see if they are happy with those. I don't think I've heard any dissent in the room to the recommendations. Is there anybody that would wish to either abstain or vote against the recommendations? I am not seeing anybody wishing to vote against. So in that case, then I'm going to take that by affirmation and passed. And we will move on to item 5, which is a report on the Highways and Transport Capital Programme. So this is the bit of where we spend our capital maintenance budget, and it's all about the prevention as much as the filling of potholes. It will also be presented by the head of Asset Management Design Delivery, Josh Rutherford. So Josh, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the proposed Highways and Transport Capital Programme for the 26-27 financial year. It explains how funding will be allocated, the outcomes expected, and how the programme will be delivered. This report also provides an update on the Soil Affected Roads Innovation Trial. For next financial year, the Highways Capital Maintenance Programme totals 58.3 million, and the Local Transport Grant Programme totals 3.45 million. When revenue funding is included, the total highways maintenance budget is over £72 million. This includes £20 million of additional county council investment. Cambridgeshire faces significant challenges due to around 40% of its road network being built on peat-based soils, which require more frequent and costly maintenance. The estimated backlog cost across the whole road network is currently just under £800 million. Public satisfaction with highways has increased by 7%, and the county recently received an amber rating from the Department for Transport. The programme follows a preventative asset management-led approach, focusing on treating assets at the right time to maximise value for money. Reactive maintenance, including pothole repairs, will continue to ensure the network remains safe. The asset management approach the county follows, which is incentivised by the Department for Transport, focuses on preventative treatments. This means targeting most of our investment at roads and footpaths which aren't yet deteriorated to the point of requiring resurfacing or reconstruction. This is as preventative treatment costs are roughly 4 times cheaper than resurfacing and 10 times cheaper than reconstruction per metre square. This means that the amount of network deterioration we are addressing for each pound spent is maximised. If this approach is not followed, then the overall condition of the network deteriorates because we are not maintaining enough of it each year to outweigh the decline. An objective, agnostic prioritisation process is then used to identify and rank locations county-wide for preventative, resurfacing and reconstruction treatments. Where schemes fall and whether they are progressed depends on which treatment is most appropriate based on their condition and the funding available. As preventative treatments are not suitable for all roads, this can lead to misunderstandings regarding why a road in comparatively better condition is being repaired. However, this rationale is centred around maximising return on investment and repairing the largest amount of the network possible for the budget available. This programme has been developed utilising the prioritisation processes agreed by the committee in December 2025 and using asset condition data which was collected county-wide in April and May 2025. This means that every road in the county will have been assessed, and those where the condition was above the agreed threshold are then added to the long list for prioritisation. The categories these routes will be scored against for resurfacing include where the road sits on the route hierarchy, how important is this particular road or is a particular road to active travel, access to local amenities, enabling public transport, road condition, expected rate of deterioration, and the cost of reactive repairs undertaken. This year's prioritisation has identified some key routes across the county, including the A605 Peterborough Road Whittlesea, the A1307 Hills Road Cambridge, the A1301 Cambridge Road Great Shelford, the A15 London Road Yaxley, and the A1304 London Road Dullingham. The £58.3 million capital programme will maintain or improve over 210 kilometres of road, improve more than 1,600 road signs, and maintain over 800 kilometres of road markings. This means that this year we are preventatively treating, resurfacing, or reconstructing 176 roads county-wide. Of these, 13% are on 13 the strategic road network, and that includes roads such as the A142 Soham to Ely bypass. 18 are addressing main roads, so main distributor roads such as the A1307 Hills Road Cambridge. Another 18 are on the secondary road network, such as the Avenue Huntingdon. 24 are on link roads, such as March Road, Friday Bridge, and 103 schemes have been identified on local roads, such as Banold Road, Waterbeach. In addition, we have also identified over 200 more locations that we are preparing in advance of preventatively treating next financial year. This is an increase of roughly 130 sites compared to last year's programme. What this means for each district is we have 92 projects identified within South for road maintenance, 47 within the city, 53 within East, 126 within Huntingdonshire, and 98 within Fenland. £2.5 million has also been ring-fenced specifically for soil-affected roads, and a £1.5 million innovation trial is being progressed to identify more sustainable long-term solutions, with on-site work expected to begin in summer 2026. £3.5 million has been identified for the local transport grant, which supports local transport improvements, community-led schemes, road safety measures, accessibility improvements, traffic management, and strategy development. Members and parishes have been engaged during the development of the programme. Delivery will use established procurement frameworks supported by clear communication with residents and communities. There will be further engagement with members and parishes following this committee regarding the approved programme. Whilst we have already contacted members to make them aware of those maintenance projects which have been prioritised in their area, the following committee will be providing further information and details on those projects which were scored but ultimately unsuccessful. In conclusion, the proposed programme represents the best use of available funding, balances safety and preventative maintenance, and responds to Cambridgeshire's unique infrastructure challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Before we go any further, we do have two public questions on this paper. So first up, we have Daniel Fulton, who is asking a question on behalf of Josh Field. So Daniel, I'm sure you know the drill. You have 3 minutes to ask your question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Along the 1.6 miles of the arterial A1301, there are few safe pedestrian crossings. Due to the volume of traffic and the width of the carriageway, crossing the road can be extremely hazardous for residents. For example, there is only one pedestrian crossing on the 1.6 mile stretch of road between the junctions at Addenbrooks Road and Station Road, and there are minimal traffic calming measures. Drivers will often exceed the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, with the only physical limits on speed being the car ahead of them, and the risk of damage from potholes littering the surface of the road. I have personally spoken with residents who find crossing the road at peak times dangerous. Will the Highways Committee address residents' needs by installing an additional safe crossing point opposite Scottsdale's and the Shelford Rugby Club as part of the 2026-2027 Local Transport Improvements Program? And will the committee agree to improving safety by adding traffic calming measures along this busy road? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fulton. My next question is from John Greenhull. John, good to see you. As before, you have 3 minutes.
I am chair of the newly established Hinchinbrook Residents Association, and I sent councillors some background information yesterday that I hope has made it easier to understand the reason for me being here today. For anyone who doesn't live on the Hinchinbrook estate, it's hard to believe that it can take 30 to 60 minutes to travel about 700 yards. But that has been the reality for residents for many years as the estate has been developed. The hospital has been expanded. The hospital has expanded its day patient services and the treatment centre has been built. The congestion occurs as Hinchinbrook Park Road is a single access road. Hinchinbrook Hospital has 1,300 car park spaces. There are 2 schools with 2,300 pupils and 800 homes with about 2,000 residents, all of whom have to use Hinchinbrook Park Road. There's also traffic from the 900 staff working at Cambridgeshire County Council's Police HQ, staff at the Fire HQ, as well as the Hinchinbrook Country Park visitors. Emergency ambulances are held up entering and exiting the hospital, endangering critically ill patients as a result of the congestion on the single access road, effectively a large cul-de-sac. In the last 5 years, additional traffic has been created on the road following the removal of the viaduct over the railway at Huntingdon Station and the creation of the A1307 and Views Common Road as part of the A14 changes. Councillor Sanderson has previously requested a second access road be investigated by Highways. By allowing the various developments that have taken place in the last 15 years, it is now difficult to find the land necessary for a second access road. Hinchinbrook Logistics Park may gain outline planning permission later this month. This will generate, according to the developers, an additional 2,500 HGV journeys each day and even more LGV and car journeys. Highways have not done any traffic modelling about the effect of these on Hinchinbrook Park Road, as they believe not one of these journeys will use the A1307 and Views Common Road. This is despite the fact that the current Cambridgeshire Advisory Freight Map indicates that HGVs should use the A1307 to the roundabout at Views Common Road and the A1307 from Huntingdon Station. This means HGVs use Views Common Road and Hinchinbrook Park Road on a daily basis, as the pictures I sent you yesterday clearly demonstrate. Regular delays of 30 to 60 minutes merit a formal review of the road approach on and around Hinchinbrook Park Road, and I suggest Highways need to approach CPCA and HDC so that the potential for a second access road can be reviewed before the opportunity to build one is lost forever. So I ask, given the frequent severe congestion issues on Hinchinbrook Park Road at peak times, what are the criteria for determining whether a second access road is needed and when will such an assessment take place?
Thank you very much, John. Josh, I'm going to look to you again, I think, to answer those questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first one regarding Great Shelford. So thank you for taking the time to contact us regarding an additional crossing point on the A1301. I'm sorry to read that residents currently find crossing the road at peak times dangerous. I confirm that our transport proposals database lists an application for a pedestrian refuge and speed cushions at this location, Cambridge Road near Scottsdales. This is a previously unsuccessful LHI scheme with an estimated scheme cost of over £50,000. The area also has additional entries, including for a cycleway improvement and junction improvements on the A1301 Cambridge Road and Granham's Road. Currently, these schemes remain unfunded, but will be revisited in advance of the 27-28 capital funding cycle. To note that Great Shelford Parish Council have also submitted a new application via our LHI process to the local highway improvement process for a pedestrian refuge island near Scottsdales. This is currently being assessed by officers and will be scored by a member panel later in the year. An update will be presented to Highways and Transport Committee in October 2026. This is a competitive process with each scheme being scored and ranked up to the funding threshold. And then the Hinchinbrook question. So thank you for contacting us regarding Hinchinbrook Park Road. I'm sorry that congestion is causing concern for residents. Officers have identified that peak hour journeys by car from Hinchinbrook to and from Huntingdon Town Centre will typically take 7 to 10 minutes more in peak periods, although when incidents occur, delays can be longer. A new access road would be a large scheme beyond the ability of the County Council to deliver from its recurring funding for transport improvements from government via the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority. A new access does not currently feature in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority's transport investment plans. Planning proposals for development are accessed from from the local highway network in the Hinchingbrooke area will be assessed against government guidance on the acceptability of their proposals in transport terms informed by the National Planning Policy Framework. Additional access points may be provided if proposed by developers or if their work demonstrates that the impact of their proposals cannot otherwise be mitigated. Planning guidance does not require that existing problems are addressed by development. Rather, new proposals should not make conditions worse than they would otherwise have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Members, before we start, I think, and I'm looking at Councillor Gardner here because he's looking at me. In this one, it's very tempting when we talk about the capital programme to get quite parochial and ask for things in our own areas. Now, I understand the desire for that. Obviously, the slight problem we have is that there are only a certain number of members of this committee, and there are a large number of members that cannot be here. So I do ask you, please, to try and avoid being purely parochial. While I understand, though, that there might need to be some questions about schemes in one's area as a way to tease out what happened with scoring criteria, please try not to be just advocating for schemes in your own areas, because there are a large number of councillors in this council that aren't here with that opportunity. But with that in mind, oh, actually, I've got one more thing before that, which is Councillor Tong has requested to speak on this item in a purely parochial fashion about members in his about items as it affects his own division. So, Councillor Tong, I believe the rules are different for you. As you're a councillor, you have 5 minutes. So do go ahead.
Don't worry, I am not nearly going to spend 5 minutes. I really wanted to just come here today and speak in support of the investment that's going into my ward, Abbey, particularly around Newmarket Road. Newmarket Road is in an absolutely terrible state. I'm sure most people who have driven through Cambridge have seen that Newmarket Road is falling apart. There's potholes everywhere, there's damage, and it causes a lot of danger for cyclists and drivers. It's really great that we're doing some stuff to address this issue. So I felt it would have been remiss of me not to pop along just to say, thanks for doing this. Really, really good. The other thing I will note is I'm also happy about the work that's going on around the Thorpe Way / Fison Road estate, trying to fix up the pavements around then. There are a number of issues in that area. The pavements are particularly bad, and I've heard multiple stories of people tripping and injuring themselves. I think a lot of people in that area kind of feel like they've been forgotten about because it is an estate that's a little bit out of the way. So it's really good that we're not forgetting about them and we're giving them that attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Elliot, for popping along. Members, do I have any questions or debate? Councillor Hathorn.
So this is a county-wide question. So obviously, you know, when you look at the figures only give a broad summary, but if this was a series of races, you would have no idea who to put your money on because it's a completely different order for every different category. So rights of way, Huntingdonshire does best, and then in another category, Huntingdonshire doesn't get any money, whatever. Can I understand, like, so this is all done by rigorous prioritization criteria. How are what is creating the difference between these different places? Obviously, Cambridge City has got quite unique, is unique as the only solely city area. But is this historic? Is this climate change? What's going on? Is it because some areas have got far more movement going through them? Is there any sort of guidance you to give us to how it's ended up with such big disparities between different places?
So I think first of all, just emphasising that you know, the prioritisation process is applied county-wide. It's objective, and it's agnostic as well. So what it then kicks out with regards to schemes which are ranked first is what we deliver up to the amount of funding available. The process is also wherever possible based on objective condition data as well. So that where schemes are ranked, what schemes have been funded, it is reflective to a certain extent to what their condition was in April and May 2025. They have then been scored against a number of other criteria, including those ones that I listed in the introduction. So things like enabling public transport, access to local amenities, where they sit on the active travel kind of hierarchy as well. And that's kind of then produced that final programme. I think then that there are the place-based allocations that are referenced within the programme, and then there are also those county-wide allocations for things like surface treatment, structures, and everything else. So the surface treatments, the preventative programme, all follows that scored approach. Likewise, some structures do where they're listed, but then an element of that is also allocated for reactive maintenance. But wherever possible, we have looked to kind of follow the prioritization process, identify projects, list those named projects, locations, and everything else within that kind of Appendix 1, so everyone has visibility of what that looks like.
Thank you very much, Josh and Councillor Hathorn. Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sure we're going to look at the list and we're going to have some things and we think, well, it's great that road got in my division. It's great, but why didn't this road get in? And it's obviously going to be, having had a glimpse of the spreadsheet, I've seen how complicated it is. It's obviously going to be completely impossible to get detailed explanations of all of that. I was just wondering, Chair, as a sort of suggestion, if Josh, some guidance from him, if we could just get for each division, maybe whatever rank they get, the top ranking road, the middle ranking road, and the lowest ranking road, with some sort of contextual explanation as to why those 3 roads scored in those positions, because I think that would give us all some sort of idea of where bits are, rather than expecting to say why did road A score more than road B, because that's just going to be, I mean, you'll spend your entire life answering those questions, right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The intention was to share later on this week how everything that's got onto the programme has scored with members. So we've obviously shared the successful stuff, but we haven't shared everything else that was on the list as well. So the plan is to share that long list, so to speak, with members, and we can add a little bit more context there around, for instance, maximum marks is 65 and the like.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. And if you please know, I'll make only one very small and positive parochial point, which is really thank you for Needingworth Road and all the residents who campaigned on this. I think it's really positive to see that in the program, so it's only a positive one. I have 2 general comments and questions, one around funding and one around the coordination with Streetworks and other agencies. So the first one is we have a lot of, I think, media and social media commentary now about the funding landscape on highways, which I think it's important residents get to discuss this. However, I want to highlight 2 important points for everyone and for everyone watching. So we are actually getting more from DFT than ever for the combined authority area. Obviously, we have the 188 million figure circulate over the next 3 years. But also, most importantly, a lot of people don't perhaps realize that we're actually getting multi-year funding, which I think it's really an essential point because it enables us to plan better, especially preventative approaches that this council wants to prioritize. So I think it's really important to highlight that. And if no one is highlighting that, I will highlight the positive stuff the government actually does on this. However, I think our role in the committee is to see about how we actually have value for money on those schemes. So whilst it's true we're getting more funding from government, it's also true the council is putting and the administration is putting more funding towards highways as well and prioritizing this area. I think the question is, why is the funding rated green and delivery is amber, and what can we do to actually get green on delivery as well? So there's just a point around funding, because I think it's very tempting to make political points either way, but I think it's important to recognize both the good things the council is doing and administration and what the government is doing at the same time, and they're not mutually exclusive. And while lobbying is welcome, I think it's good to recognize that. I want to raise a couple of issues that are concerning from a resident perspective. One is when projects are put forward multiple years for capital maintenance, but instead we end up doing smaller repairs, which overall over a number of years might actually cost more than resurfacing in the first place. And there are some examples where I can give some examples of roads where there have been many tens of smaller repairs, and then the questions residents have is, would it have been cheaper instead of doing repairs for like 5 years in a row, smaller repairs, to actually resurface that? And I know not everything can be included, but I would welcome any further discussion around how do we measure that and how do we know which roads actually have work done pretty much every year and how much it would cost if we were to prioritize those in a more preventative way. And then Secondly, which is I think it's a big topic maybe for spokes or maybe for a working group, is the links between asset management and street works, because we often get things that are on capital program, and we get those emails saying, well, unfortunately, because street works have informed that we can't do it this year, we have to do to delay it a bit. And I think that's what frustrates some residents from a comms perspective, because perhaps it's very difficult to understand what the links are and why some of those delays happen, which are often not within the direct control of the highways team. So I'd really welcome the chair's comments and the officer's comments around exploring further those topics. And yeah, overall, I welcome the program. Of course, not everything can be done, but I welcome some of the approach that's being taken here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bulat. Before Josh responds to those very good questions, I probably do just need to address the funding point that you made there, that national government is indeed giving us 188 million for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough over the next 4 years. And I believe that is the highest that we've ever had. So that is welcome. However, and I will let Josh confirm this, I believe the statistics are that we need over 230 million just for Cambridgeshire, just to stay still. So the money is welcome, but I think it is important that we all realise the gap in that. And it is welcome that government is investing more, but it shows you, one, how little has been invested historically, and two, what challenging times us and other local authorities face. But I'll hand over to Josh to confirm and answer the rest of your questions. Some good ones in there.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, I think first of all on the kind of funding element. So what we've identified across all our assets is a need to kind of invest just over 57 million pounds per year to basically keep them in their existing condition. So of that, kind of about 34 million was specifically for roads. The amount that we're due to receive from the funding settlement this year, which does increase, is 31.3 million from government. So that's kind of where we are with the amount that's received from the funding settlement. It wouldn't kind of keep our roads in a steady state. With regards to kind of the green on funding, amber on delivery, it's actually kind of an amber on approach. So our asset management approach. So that's again where the DfT is trying to drive that approach to preventative maintenance, focusing more on preventative maintenance, investing more money in preventative maintenance, and how they're measuring that, or one of the ways they're measuring that is looking at how much road we're repairing for the amount of money that we've invested. So we're looking to address that. With regards to that increase in investment in kind of preventative treatments, and hopefully turn that amber into a green as soon as possible. With regards to how do we kind of incorporate reactive work into this planned process, one of the scoring categories specifically picks out kind of the quantity and cost of road repairs. So one of the scoring criteria which we will assess, and we have assessed each road on, is how often they've been visited for pothole repairs and the like, and what the cost of that is as well. Obviously, some roads it's much more costly with regards to traffic management and everything else to undertake reactive repairs. So that is part of the prioritisation process, but we can definitely look at how we can place more emphasis on that going forward. And then the street works coordination, Councillor Bulat kind of spoke really well to the challenges. Not everything's in our direct control. Cambridgeshire as a county is growing rapidly. There are a lot of utilities and other organisations wanting access to the network to kind of undertake works, and we have to navigate around that. We're sometimes reliant on other government organisations like National Highways and Network Rail as well for permission to actually get on the network to then deliver the work. So that does mean that things are outside of our direct control. We try and coordinate that as much as possible through kind of liaison meetings, early engagement, and identifying potentially those ones which are going to be more challenging early on to then look to mitigate things as much as possible. But inevitably, it does mean that in some cases, schemes have to kind of be moved back in the programme or delivered later than we want.
Thank you very much, Josh. I'm actually following on from Alex's question, I'm going to ask a question of my own, and I appreciate you might not be able to answer it this second, but I think it'd be helpful for all of us, which is it'd be really good to get kind of the average cost per kilometre or per mile of resurfacing, surface treatment, and reconstruction. I understand you might not have those numbers to hand now, so I might ask you if you do, though, let me know.
I mean, I can talk to a metre square, which is kind of £10 to £15 for a surface treatment, 40 to £60 for a resurfacing, and then kind of £100 to £150 for a reconstruction scheme. So yeah.
If you're able to do that, I think a road is about 6 meters wide there. It'd be good just to get them out so we can all understand.
Yeah, you're putting Barry on the spot there, but
I will come back to him later on, but if you are able to, that would be really handy. Next up, though, I've got Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I too struggled a little bit with the new reporting format for this, though I was very encouraged with what I read. It is sort of dotted all over the place, and obviously we are a bit parochial, aren't we? So automatically I looked for the Huntingdon projects and then thought, oh, this isn't on there, and later in subsequent pages I found it. But that's just me there. If I can just be slightly parochial in response to the question Councillor Green, it's not Councillor Greenhill, maybe one day, Mr. Greenhill asked, on the link road, Hinchinbrook Hospital, I think, are very keen to do this. They have drawn up some plans for a potential link road. I hope the Combined Authority are watching, because it's been quite difficult to get responses from them on this to add it to their capital programme. But I look forward to working with Josh and others in this room to potentially achieve that when the redevelopment of the hospital takes place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, if I may. The first one is on the scoring system for roads dependent on whether or not they have a bus on them. And my recollection is that if the road has a bus on it, it gets 5 points. And if it doesn't have a bus on it, it gets 1 point, and that those are double weighted. What that then means is that if a road was ideal to have a bus on it, but doesn't, because it is in such a poor state that it cannot safely have a bus on it, then you get a persisting spiral of decline. Because it doesn't have a bus on it, it gets 1 point rather than 5, which means 2 points rather than 10, which means it's lower down the scoring system, which means that next year it will also get lower points and be lower down the scoring system in perpetuity. And I do wonder whether we can do something to identify roads that really could do with a bus on for the benefit of the settlements at either end, but also further on in the system. I've got a specific issue in my ward, in my division, which I won't go into because I'm not going to be parochial about it, but I think it is a general situation that roads are being turned down by operators to run a bus on where they could, and they could make money and they could do community good. But because the road is in such a poor condition, they just can't do it. So it goes down and down the cycle. And I'm wondering whether we can look at the need for a bus as much as whether or not there actually is a bus when we look at the scoring. My second question is about the section that begins on page 201 of this report, which is projects proposed for discontinuation. And some of them say, among the reasons for discontinuing, complex corridor scheme more suited to other funding sources and delivery means. Now, what I would like to know is this real other funding sources and real other delivery means, or is it just saying this isn't suitable for this, go away and find something else? Have we identified, is there a realistic prospect of other funding sources and other delivery means for the projects on that list that are being recommended for discontinuation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre. So I think on the first one, we'd have to work with CPCA essentially to look at those opportunities and everything else, and also kind of transport assessment teams too, to look at what we could do there, but that's definitely something we can look at and we'll take on board and kind of pick up outside of this meeting. So thank you for flagging that. Your second question about discontinuation, some schemes might unlock Section 106. But probably the more pertinent one is a lot of those corridor type schemes, because we've taken them to a point in development, there's actually an opportunity for Active Travel England funding with them. And that is probably going to be the primary route by which they're progressed. Obviously, the authorities done quite well previously out of Active Travel England funding. There will be future tranches, and those projects would go into that discussion.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to pick up on your bit about prioritization criteria as well. I think given that we've just discussed, in the previous item, having a working group to go through the HADs and HAMs, I think it might be sensible for that to also potentially go through how we look at scoring criteria for next year, because I think the scoring criteria needs to be a constantly evolving process as we look at it each year and what's going well, what's not going well, whether there are tweaks made to it in the same way we do the LHI process. So I think maybe that's something we can capture as to catch up on as well for the next season of these. I would also really welcome the chance to bring this earlier next time around so that we can really dive in perhaps before the winter season. Next on my list, though, I have Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Josh, for the report. I think you may have already answered the question, but it would be useful for clarification. If we have an emergency resurfacing of a road that is required, and that costs X, do we then, and that has to be done, do we then take one of these schemes that you've listed here? Does one of those schemes fall by the wayside, or does that emergency sort of resurfacing come out of a different pot? That's just what.
So we have kind of revenue funding. So if it was a reactive issue as you've described, then we would first of all deliver the work as soon as possible and then look at the funding afterwards and where it came from. But there is the potential for it to come from revenue. There is also the patching budgets. So within each district, as well as named projects, there is a patching budget which is almost set aside for patching work and then any kind of emergencies that do happen over the course of the year. And within the prioritization process, just to offer a little bit of assurance there were some discussions about potential safety and things like that earlier on. There is kind of a particular option within the process where if there was a significant safety factor, then the scheme would be automatically prioritized.
Thank you, Josh. Next, I've got Councillor Edge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Josh. I've got quite a few questions, but I'll try and keep them really short. Firstly, Councillor Beckett, I completely agree with the scoring criteria approach. I think we, as I was alluding to earlier, I think evolution is everything here. We need to kind of make sure that we're listening and we're responding to how things are changing. And I think this partially links into where my mind was going with some of this. Looking at the item as a whole. I've never seen one with so much delegated authority, and I've never seen and I think kind of the process that's been described myself, and I'm sure many other councillors here, and we're only 15 of 61, have probably reached out to Josh to try and ask get questions answered. I think there's something there in terms of process and timing that I think we really need to address before this comes next year. I think there should be an opportunity. This is such a hot topic for every division, without getting parochial, that I think there should be an opportunity for every member to understand what's going on in their division, maybe challenge it, but certainly, be able to kind of have confidence that it is the right thing, because I think this then leads on to one of my other questions, and so I would like us to be able to look at that timing if possible. I totally, I have confidence in our chair, vice chair, and our officers in kind of making sure that we've got, that we're doing the best scoring under what's there at the moment. However, I think as members and we're listening to our local residents. We're observing the roads and the footways, which is what I'm leading to in our area, probably more than anyone. And it feels to me that although I have more confidence with the roads, with the scanner that we've kind of been using, I'm a little bit nervous about the footways. That's being that maybe a little bit too subjective, that it's not really kind of taking on board where things are at, and that then in itself leads to things that are on the edge. So I alluded to earlier the premise of locations where we might have a pavement. I'm talking more about footways here, but it could equally apply to roads, whereby it is clearly going to go beyond prevention if it isn't handled in that year. You'd kind of put it in the red risk category. Yet I'm finding in my own division, and I'm not wanting to get parochial, I'm wanting to use this as an example, that I have other footways that are on the list that I know could last another 3 years probably. And it just seems we need to take that on board. It kind of leads into, I guess, what Councillor Gardner was saying, that if we end up needing to kind of intervene because something has just failed, it's going to cost more money, and we're going to have to kind of manage that in different ways. So I welcome what we've got, but I just think we need to constantly let this evolve and kind of challenge how we could do it better next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Josh, did you want to respond to any of that?
Probably picking up on a few key points, and then maybe a separate discussion. Anyway, with regards to those comments about the delegations, so that's kind of due to how the funding comes to us via the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, and also to actually unlock delivery. So procurement routes, entering into contracts and the like is why certain things are delegated, so we can just move forward and get things delivered as soon as possible. The committee is obviously approving the funding and the actual schemes that are as listed within Appendix 1. So I think with regards to the footways, so they are surveyed in a approved way, similar to how the roads are surveyed to then draw out asset condition data. However, it is a visual survey by an accredited individual that walks and scores all of the footways county-wide, and then they're ranked based on that output. What we have is we have a large footway network. It is obviously something which takes a considerable amount of time because people have to walk it all. Similar to the asset condition data referenced for roads, which we've used to kind of prioritise this programme, which was collected in April and May 2025. The condition surveys are going to provide a snapshot in time, but not necessarily up to date condition information. The whole idea of using the asset condition, at least in part, is to have that kind of objective element which gets things onto the programme, and then the prioritisation process is then what scores them, of which a part is asset condition data, but then you've got the other criteria as well. And just to re-emphasise, kind of in previous years, we have intervened where we've noticed roads which we could potentially do a little bit of patching to via the highway maintenance officer or whatever else, and then they have dropped into the preventative programme for the next year. So we are able to kind of respond dynamically in year as well, and usually there is a little bit of flexibility within that pre-patching and prep budget that we have for surface treatments as well, which means that we're not always necessarily drawing on other highway maintenance kind of reactive budgets to do that.
Thank you very much, Josh. Just to pick up myself as well, obviously this prioritisation process and way of doing this in a clear, transparent way is still actually quite new. I mean, when we first came in last time around as the joint administration, Alex will know, we had no clear way of doing this and no transparent prioritization. So this is an iterative process. I think, like you, I would really welcome this coming earlier. Obviously, as Josh has picked up, this is based on condition data for last summer. So the closer we can get this list to when that condition data is captured, the better. I think it would also help us all with discussions around budget. If we actually had an idea of the prioritization list, we could then see what we were actually getting for our money each year when it came to budget discussions. So I think the earlier we can bring this, and if we can actually even bring it before the business planning process, it will help us all understand what business planning means in terms of our roads, footpaths and cycleways and everything else. So I really hope we can start to look at bringing this earlier. I know for Josh and the team, that's a big technical challenge, and we're asking a lot for you to be able to bring it earlier. Barry, I apologize, but I think it would be worthwhile for all of us if we could do that. Do I have anybody else? Yes, go ahead. Councillor Keane.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. I'm interested, obviously I'm a substitute on this committee. It's the first time I've had the chance to be here. And having seen item 4 and item 5, the thing that's really key in my mind is, where do you think we're going to be in 2 years' time with our backlog? Is what we're doing now going to reduce the 800 million, or is it we're going to be bigger? We're obviously got some great work going on, but I'm really interested in that from your perspective, with the plans we've got, the strategy, obviously the fact that we're not getting the funding that we would like. And I'm just kind of intrigued to find out, do we feel we're stabilizing the situation? Are we just reducing the decline, or will we actually improve it?
Thank you. And for the benefit of those on the live stream, I need to point out that you're not Councillor Fisher that came up on the live stream. You're substituting it as Councillor Keane. Josh, if you able to answer that though.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. So I think when we look at kind of network condition, improvement, decline, and everything else, we routinely look at kind of 10-year cycles, so 10-year investment periods. With regards to what we're investing this year, we are improving the condition of our roads and we are improving the condition of our footways. However, that investment then needs to be sustained over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Josh. And I do think that is a really important point, that we are now, by the DFT formulas that you've said, putting in enough to actually, hold the line, as it were, which hasn't happened for so long. But it is going to be a long process to address that 800 million backlog. We are talking a lot of money that needs to be invested. What frustrates me the most in that is, if you look at it in DFT terms, a major road building project, the amount of our backlog is actually nothing. The Black Cat, I believe, is up to about £1 billion now for that. The old A14 was 1.5 billion. So for the price of one of those major road schemes, you could actually fix every road in Cambridge and address that backlog. It's very frustrating when I see people talking about, an active travel route that's £1 million here or £1 million there, and whether we should be putting that into highways maintenance, because actually, when we're spending nearly 60 million a year, that doesn't make such a big difference. But if you put it in terms of a large major road building project, there is the money there to be able to do this and to be able to address the backlog. We just need DFT to be able to treat maintenance seriously and say that maintenance and actually continuing to allow people to get to where they need to go, to get to work, school, college, everything else, and actually investing in those local roads is just as important as a big highways project. I mean, I would care to expect that far more people use our local roads every day and experience that backlog than will use the Black Cat every day, even though the Black Cat might well be a very worthwhile project. Our local roads are used by pretty much all of us every day, and that's really important that we do get those back up to a good standard. Do I have anybody else though? Councillor Gardner looked like you were about to do something there, but no. Okay. Before I finish, Barry, did you manage to get those kind of price per miles? If you do have them, amazing.
Yes. So for surface treatment per kilometre, 96,000. For resurfacing, taking an average of £50 per square metre, is £320,000. And reconstruction, again, plumbing in the middle, is around £800,000 per kilometre.
Wow, that does put those. I've always had them as per square metre. I've never had them per mile before, or per kilometre. And it really does put it into context just how important it is that we get to those roads before they deteriorate, because those numbers become very large very quickly. Brilliant though. Members, there is a very long recommendation list here, as Councillor Edge pointed out, with a lot of delegations. I think it is important to have those as we can crack on and start delivering, because I don't think our residents would thank us if we weren't actually delivering those. I don't think I've heard any dissent from anyone about approving this paper in the programme. I'm looking around the room. Is there anyone that's not thinking to approve it? Okay, in that case then, I will take that by affirmation that we approve the Capital Highways and Transport Capital Programme. Thank you very much. Now, the time is just gone 12 o'clock. I'm aware we're meant to take a break every 2 hours, so I think now would probably be a good time to do that. Can I ask everyone to be back here by, should we say 1:15 to wrap up the last bits of this? Thank you very much. Members, let's kick off again. So next is agenda item 6, which actually I propose we probably put 6 and 7 together because they're both quarterly performance updates, one for quarter 2, one for quarter 3. I think it might make sense to do them together. But introducing this report, we have Lee Harris, who is our new executive or interim executive director of Place and Sustainability. So Lee, I don't know whether you want to introduce yourself and introduce the reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So I'm Lee Harris. I'm the Interim Executive Director for Place and Sustainability. I joined the authority 3-4 weeks ago now. So this is, I think, week 3 in the job. So previously I was Executive Director for Place Services, so similar bundle of services at West Sussex County Council. The hot topic there was highways, so this is very familiar territory. And I did that for 8 years, and before that I was a district chief executive at Crawley Borough Council, and along various roles in local government before then. I'm here just on an interim basis. Really pleased to join the county council. Some things feel really familiar, and some things are clearly very unique to the county. So really pleased to be learning about those as well. And joining the team over the coming months while you recruit to a permanent executive director. So turning, if I may, Chair, to quarter 2 and quarter 3 performance report. I'm not going to say a great deal about those, except that they provide, as you're accustomed to, an overview of how the service is performing against its strategic indicators. And the reports have been prepared in line with the corporate framework. We've got narratives against the KPIs. Now, I'll be really careful about this because I know members want to get into talking about the current performance on potholes, but at the time of Q2 and Q3, the performance was broadly stable with majority of indicators on track. There are some red indicators, and there are explanations about those. Now, I know members want to get into the current performance, so if I can ask David Allett to talk about how things are going at the moment from the service perspective and what we're doing to recover the position. So if I can hand to David. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, so we do recognise a lot of the comments made today from members about the potholes and the spike in potholes. We've ramped up pothole repair crews in response, and we've activated an operational recovery plan, and this is to address the severe deterioration of the highway network, and that's following the exceptionally wet winter and freeze-thaw conditions. The combination of weather conditions that we have has been sort of the worst, the worst possible weather combination at the worst possible time, and we're seeing it across the network. The number of potholes requiring repair has increased to approximately 6,500 by late February, driven by the weather impacts on top of the existing backlog. Now, this issue has been escalated to senior leadership with the contractor, and it should also be noticed that as well as the demands of the network and the increase in potholes, we're also seeing significant spikes in customer reports and correspondence. I will circulate a more detailed note to members that sets out the detail of the operational recovery actions, but if I could summarise them now, I think it would be helpful. So, as I've said, we have significantly ramped up the pothole repair crews out on the network. This is from 4 to 6 crews. We're right up to 24 crews out on the network now, and that's ramped up since late January. It's not just the crews. We brought in additional scheduling capacity and supervisor capacity. We also have a third Dragon Patcher that's deployed on the network. Now, the result of this is we're now repairing over 1,800 potholes each week. We've increased night working and weekend working with dedicated night crews in operation where appropriate, and this allows us to get on the network in a way that is less disruptive. We've established a coordination unit with extra scheduling resource from ourselves and our streetworks service, but also from the contractor. And they're working collectively to get crews on the network safely and as quickly as possible and respond to the demand. We've also introduced additional officer capacity to identify the defects, to progress the customer reports and order the works. A specific team has been brought in to deal specifically with the increased correspondence coming in, which will then free up our operational resource to focus on doing and ordering and processing the much needed repairs. Now, I chair a weekly meeting with the contractor. I chair that meeting. Through that meeting, we review the weekly performance, we review the hotspots, we review where the customer reports are coming in, and we talk about the actions to drive ongoing improvement and delivery to ensure quality and to make sure that we're on top of the demand. The meeting is attended by operational leads from M Group, as well as our depot leads, but also the scheduling resource. And a key question as part of that group is, where are the blockers? Where are the hotspots? How do we coordinate? And how do we deliver in a coordinated, strategic way? Yes, extra resource and extra coordination. It's a challenge that is faced nationally, and we do need to keep pushing, and we're conscious of the impact that this is having on our communities. I will circulate the briefing note to members, which goes into more detail about the actions that I've described.
Thank you very much, David. And I do probably need to say myself just how seriously I take this. I think none of us are happy with the current condition of our highways and the current situation on the ground. What's important is obviously, though, what we're doing about it and how we're reacting to it. What's frustrating is that I think we came into this pothole season, and it is, as everyone knows, a seasonal thing. Historically, we always see actually it's about February that we start to see a big spike in potholes. We came into it actually doing pretty darn well. We had really low levels of outstanding potholes. We had really low levels of customer reports. But actually, it was December where it all started to go wrong. And it was David and I actually talking together. We saw the data of the number of outstanding potholes suddenly start to shoot up. And that was actually mainly, I think, driven by our inspectors finding potholes. And then you saw in January that our number of public pothole reports, there was that little period of snow and ice, and I alluded to this earlier, went from about sort of 500 pothole reports a week to about 2,000, all in the space of a week. And it has remained significantly higher than normal through that. I think it is important, though, to put this into context with other local authorities. This isn't just us by any stretch of the imagination. I actually did a little bit of maths of what I could find publicly from other similar local authorities. So comparing us to those that do have data online, the likes of Oxfordshire, Northumberland, Northamptonshire. And if you look at that, the number of public reports we're getting per kilometre is roughly middle of the pack, actually. There are other areas that are doing much worse than us. And if you look at the number of repairs we're doing a week, David alluded to, I think, 1,800. I think last week we hit 2,000 a week. If you put that into context of other areas, Suffolk this week was reporting they did 500 pothole repairs a week on a similar size network, and Oxfordshire also was reporting about 500 pothole repairs a week, again on a similar size network. So we are ramping significantly, but that is not to say that it is not deeply challenging out there on the network at the moment, and I really do understand that and really feel the same frustration that all of our residents do, and we obviously want to return it to the best possible shape as quickly as possible. The long-term way of doing that, though, as you all know, is what we've just been talking about, which is that preventative treatment and making sure we get ahead of potholes. It is far more efficient to be preventing potholes than it is to be filling them. But I will stop talking myself there. Do members have any questions or comments on the entire performance report, not just potholes? But go ahead, Councillor Galbraith.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ignore that you're there, because I thought my question before you actually said that. May I address this probably to you, David, but it's admirable about your weekly meetings with contractors, etc. Do you publish the outcome of these meetings? Is there any way, you probably know I did write, and this is being extremely personal, but I'm using an example, did write about one particular area I was very concerned about. And apart from just saying the rectification of the individual things on the normal report and highway report, I haven't seen a response to that email to you, which I did actually copy and Councillor Beckett as well with. Is that something you're going to do when you have your weekly meetings? Are you going to actually inform councillors or other people who've put these points to you?
About what we're doing to address the potholes, about the number of crews and the matters. Yeah, absolutely. So as I've said, I'll be circulating a note that describes the actions. We did in January put something out as well as a statement to set out that this was happening, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that performance and how it's going.
Thank you very much. I should point out as well for benefit of everyone else, as you're probably aware, there's an awful lot of public correspondence coming in to the service and to me. I'm doing my best to try and keep up with it and reply to all the emails I get. If I don't reply to them all, I apologize. And I think it's the same with the service, that perhaps we are taking longer than we would like to always be able to respond to things, but we are attempting to get back on top of it as fast as we can. Do I have anybody else? Sorry, actually I do. You're right. Councillor Edge and then Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. I'm just going to say I totally appreciate these reports probably take quite a bit to put together, and I also appreciate the fact that we didn't get the chance to look at Q2 last time because the committee meeting went on to the extent that it did. However, I just wanted to come at a slightly different angle with this. We're looking at a Q2, Q3 report in Q4, and the conversation that we've had thus far has really been about what the current state is, and I know to a certain extent this is it's a data issue and it's not just a highways thing, but I really do think if we're trying to bring kind of good scrutiny and kind of meaningful kind of reflection, we do need to be looking at things that are more current, and I think I'd really embrace that we can kind of look at kind of how we can improve that in the future. On a more specific point, at the last committee meeting, and briefly I think Councillor Fane mentioned it at this one, we talked about safety, and I appreciate one of the measures in here is talking about kind of traffic collision cluster sites and killed and seriously injured. The root of that data, if I'm correct, is from a very specific source, and it depends how it's being captured. I do wonder, given the amount of correspondence I'm sure we're all getting, whether there's something more that we can do to capture clarity around safety connected to the quality of our roads. It was mentioned last time. I just feel it's a measure, a KPI that we perhaps need to think about how we might be able to add it. Obviously, I totally get it's down to whether you can capture that data in the first place. So just a couple of points I wanted to kind of pick up on, really.
Thank you, David. Jamie, do you want to respond to any of those? Take it away. Fair enough. Just to follow up your point there on road maintenance and safety, I agree with you. I think we mentioned this last meeting about how to do that. I think it's also really important to think about our pavements. We have a habit of when somebody slips, trips or falls over on a pavement of not considering that to be a road safety factor, and actually in the DFT's definition I don't think it does class as a road safety issue, but it is still somebody being hurt on our network, and therefore we should very much reflect on that and take that on board. Next I've got Councillor Hathorn though.
It's a similar question. So yeah, it's about accidents. So the proportion of killed or seriously injured casualties who are defined as vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, e-scooters, younger people and older people, that's declining. That's good. It's gone from 73% to 64%. Excellent. However, the total number of people killed or seriously injured is above the previous year. So, and the number of road cluster sites is larger as well. Is there any analysis of what's going on? Is it more car accidents for people who aren't young and old? Yeah, what's going on? Do we know?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. It takes a little bit of time for the data to filter through for us to be able to look at the actual causation. I think partly it's linked to the fact that with a growing county, we've simply got more people on the network. For us and the Road Safety Partnership, it's really important to understand those causation factors, be they driver behaviour, and also linked to the transport mode as well. So it's very much something we're looking at the moment. We've got a workshop coming up in a few weeks to really look at those areas of causation and to see what we can learn from those trends.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. When it comes to active travel, I'm assuming we're only talking about on active travel routes that we've actually designated. Do we look at, as a council, particularly in the rural areas, where we know, or there has been now sort of routes coming across those, single track roads, which are becoming much more popular with cyclists and what have you, because there's various infrastructure gone on the particular routes. Are we taking that into account when we're looking at active travel?
I think there's some definition. Do you mean in terms of new schemes or in terms of maintenance?
I'm looking at, I'm trying not to be parochial, but I can give you an example. So in my division, because if you're a cyclist and you want to go long distances, you would come, say, from Kimbolton and cycle out, go through Spaldwick, Barham, Buckworth. There is a CAF gone in Buckworth, so all the cyclists use that, which is very, very popular. As other CAFs are available, yeah. So what I'm asking is, are we checking to see over the course of years, which routes are being used by cyclists? Because we ought to be then incorporating that into our figures. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, really good question. And we, of course, have our active travel hierarchy, which is a really useful piece of work that was crowdsourced, co-developed with input from the communities, where we shared all of our routes across the network, and our communities told us which of these were important, well used, and that's factored into our approach. On top of the highway, we monitor traffic as well routinely, so we understand how people are using. And then the question relating to the actual data that we get relating to safety, which Jamie might want to add or not, is we understand where incidents occur, and we also understand the user types as well. So we get some intelligence from safety records as well. But ideally, as part of the proactive approach, it's understanding usage, identifying risks before incidents occur.
Thank you. And I just want to add on to that as well, and tell me if I'm going to get this wrong, David. As far as I understand it, in our performance indicators, particularly where we're looking at mode of travel and traffic numbers, we do that via a traffic count every year, and there are certain locations where that is done. So in Cambridge, there's the radials, there's the Cambridge Screen Line, we then have market towns. That's historically how it's always been done, because that was the only way you can do it easily. You can't monitor, historically you couldn't monitor it all the time, so you picked a day or a week and you did your counts. I think there is a potential to look again at how we do that. We now have a lot more Vivacity cameras, and that's actually public if you ever want to look at, and those will actually decide the amount of traffic with each route and all those things. So I think there is potentially a chance at some point to look at how we capture those metrics and make sure we are capturing as much as possible of that change, because at the moment I think it is in very specific areas when we look at it as a KPI. Does that?
All I was going to say, Councillor Beckett, on that point, yes, but the roads I'm talking about are exceedingly rural roads, so I do not see how we're collecting that data. That's what I'd be interested to know, because going forward, these roads are becoming a lot more popular, particularly at weekends, or even with people commuting. Some I know from my division commute to here on a bike. So we do need to keep track of the routes that people are using, because it's changed over time.
Thank you. No, I totally understand that, and we've just said we can share the locations where all of the data is captured. I do think you make a very good point, though, and I think we probably need to occasionally look again at our active travel hierarchy and come back to how things are changing over time and reflecting on where those are and making sure we're capturing the data. I'm not sure it's for this at the moment, but it is probably something we can reflect on, is how we capture the data and do it properly. I know within road safety at the moment now they're using what's known as Compass data, which actually has much more vehicle flow data and vehicle speed data. It's obviously a lot harder to do that for active travel users because they're not carrying, devices in the same way. But actually, Lee, is there something we want to add on that?
Well, just that H&T, the indicator H&T 001 is the one. There are, in the descriptor, there are over 100 locations. Just checking with colleagues that we can share where those are, and there can be reflections back from the committee. It's not perfect. We wouldn't have a camera on every road, but have we got the right balance? It would be a helpful feedback from members.
I'm sure there are points where members might think that would be a good place because we've got local knowledge as to where people are cycling or whatever. So I do think that's where we could improve our data, which would help us going forward.
It's an interesting question for me as well, because you want consistency with old data so that you can compare it together. And actually, going back to road maintenance, this is the first year I've actually got proper data on CRNs, and therefore we haven't really got anything to compare it to previously. Pothole outstanding numbers, I've got the data to show how this year is actually comparing to previous years, and the TLDR on outstanding potholes is that we're doing worse than last year, but we're doing way better than 2023. With that though, with the active travel data, it's important that you keep consistency, but also look to improve it where possible and add as much as possible. So it is an interesting question, and something that actually perhaps is worth revisiting, how we capture that user data and user of our networks, because it is changing a lot, shall we say, and actually making sure we reference and reflect on that is really important. Just stop myself. Does anyone else have any questions or comments they wish to make? Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. It's really good to hear about the additional resources being allocated on when David was speaking about the additional Dragon patcher, and especially nighttime and weekend working, because I think it's really important to minimize disruption wherever possible, especially with increased numbers of work. I was actually, whilst I was in the break before this next session started, I got an email about one of the works being inspected in St. Ives, and then our officer actually realizing the work was below standard and asking the contractor to come back to redo the work. So that's just one of the many examples. And I was wondering, I mean, it was quite good timing. I was checking my email before the break, and I was actually wondering whether we should have some report in this committee on that matter, because I think it would be really interesting to see the whole picture of how many are inspected, what are the outcomes, how many were actually done at no additional cost to the council, and how many actually needed additional budget. Because sometimes when you ask the contractor to come back to redo the work, you might think, actually, since you're there, can you also do this additional bit of the work in the same area if you actually have budget in your project? So it would be just interesting to see this, reported part of performance and monitoring. My question is around the communication aspect around reporting, not only potholes, but highway defects in general, because I think one of the frustrating issues from a resident perspective as well as parish councils is when you open the reported tool and the map and you see the outstanding items, and perhaps you reported something a few months ago and there might be a good reason as to why that is not prioritized or not done immediately, but because you don't have the follow-up or update, you might think, well, I reported this a few months ago, I didn't get anything, what's the point of reporting it? So I want to encourage residents to, of course, keep on reporting the defect. So I was wondering to what extent can we improve some of the comms around that, because obviously once a work is ordered, actually where we have an actual update, we do get that response, but I know there are quite a few that are logged as items, but you don't really have an update, and some of them have been logged for quite a while, and I think that is impacting, I guess, some of the public trust around this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the customer experience we want to provide through the system, and it is a new system that officers are still finding their feet with, but it has the capability that every order that gets reported, the customer receives an update at each step of the journey. And that's we consider that to be a bare minimum of what that tool must do for us to help keep our customers updated on the defects that they've taken the time to report for us. In addition to that, absolutely take the point that there's more that we can do at a more general level on top of the information in the Report It tool. For example, to highlight where works have been ordered, when will those be repaired by. So we're developing that information now as we speak to help to complement that. But I think the the key aspect right now is making sure that that system's reporting through, so every case that's reported by the customer actually gets those updates at each point in the journey, right through to the confirmation email that says your defect has now been repaired.
Thank you, David. And just from my own perspective as well, I think the Aurora system does allow us a lot more oversight than we've previously been able to have. And this pothole season has been particularly challenging. I really hope that there's a lot of lessons we can learn from this and take to next year. And one of the things I would like to make sure for next year is that we in this committee, but also councillors more broadly, get far more data on what's happening in their areas and what the situation is, because I think the more people that can see that, the better. It is something that I think will take us a while to make sure it's consistent, accurate. And what I really don't want is people getting data that's inaccurate, because that can mislead, and we need to be very careful on that. But I think there are real opportunities to do that. I know Josh has also been looking at how we can update, say, the Report It function to be able to show potholes that have been ordered by our inspectors, for example, so you can actually get a real example of what's going on rather than just seeing the ones that are publicly reported. It'd be good to see what else is there. Last year they were able to add the resurfacing roads, so if you go on to Report It, you can see where was about to be resurfaced, and I think that's incredibly useful, and I hope we're going to be able to see the same this year. The more of that stuff that we can share with people to show what is going on and how it's changing, I think is greatly appreciated, even though, as I say, I reference at the moment, we are in a challenging time. Do I have anybody else? No? In that case, then I believe these ones, item 6 and 7, we are just to essentially scrutinise. Item 6, we are scrutinise the performance information that's present for and note the highlighted risk information, seek reassurance regarding appropriate control measures. I think we've done that. Does anybody disagree? Nope. And again, we have debated number 7. So item 8 is the finance monitoring report. So Lee, over to you. Are you able to introduce the finance monitoring report for us?
I'll be very brief, Chair. I think the overall position for this committee's budget is that it is contributing to the council's overall revenue position by underspending. There is just highlighting a little bit on the highway maintenance. Although there's an underspend shown on highway maintenance, that is on the revenue side. That is because the work is being, quite a lot of work, over £1 million, is being capitalised because it's deemed suitable for capital budget. I think the underspend, given the position on highway maintenance over the winter, it may not materialise in terms of the underspend. The budget may be fully spent. There is an income pressure within the budget as well, which is on car parking, and there's some mitigations. But overall, the position is favourable for the committee. On capital, there are some underspend projections on capital. Some of that is because work is being rephased into Q1. That's resurfacing work. It's very difficult to resurface highways over the winter, and that work's been reprogrammed into Q1. And then there are some underspends which are really rephasings on a number of projects which are set out in the detail of the capital report, where again money's been slipped into the subsequent year. And I'll just see if Becky wants to add anything to my introduction.
No, nothing specific to add, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions or comments on the finance monitoring report? Not seeing anything. That's good. Thank you very much. Oh, Johnny, sorry. Councillor Hadge.
So it's only a really quick one. So just for absolute clarity, the capital spend that you were saying moving to Q1, is that still being covered in this budget though, and kind of carried over rather than, yeah, just wanted clarity.
Becky, do you want to confirm that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will go through a rephasing exercise for capital budgets in May, and any budget that hasn't been spent this year but is still committed against schemes will be rolled forward into next year, and Strategy, Resources and Performance in June will approve those updated capital budgets.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Anything else? No. In that case, then we were asked to review and comment on the Finance Monitoring Report. I don't think we commented that much, but we have reviewed. Unless anybody has anything else they want to say? No. Okay. Item 9 is the committee's agenda plan and appointments. Are there any comments or questions from members or officers on the agenda plan? No. Fine. Sorry. Finally, we have a few appointments to make in the Democratic Services. Deputy Manager Nick Mills will speak on those. Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. There are a couple of outside bodies that are looking for our representatives for the council on. One of these is the Cam Valley Community Rail Partnership, which has been around for a long time. And then there's a new rail partnership for the Cambridge to Ipswich line. So yes, they're looking for nominations for members to participate with them.
Nick, I thought you said we previously had members on those. Okay.
Members have previously been involved with them, but they've asked for formal representation, which wouldn't preclude other members from attending and joining in, but the council would have a formal representative.
Sorry, Councillor Edge.
Can I put my name in for that one? I mean, it's very much kind of going through my division, so probably similar to Councillor Morgan.
Brilliant. Happy to put you forwards for those then. Anybody else on anything else? Okay, the next committee meeting is scheduled for the 5th of May, 2026. Brilliant. I think that is everything. So thank you very much, everyone. Good to see you all, and see you on the 5th of May. Thank you.